to sit here with this knowledge and information, and I've walked through many paths to completion and continued on my journey. Always remember that the student is the master and the master is the student. This is really a collective build. It is a co-creation. And when we all dial into this synchronistic space, we say, okay, this is what I need to know right now, universe. And then universe will be like, it just so happens that there's quite a few in your tribe that also need to be aware of this same thing. And knowledge also is very interesting because if you don't have like a mega mind and you just can store all the data, you have a photographic memory, you even forget that you know certain things. In fact, the entire testament of existence is actually forgetting and re-experiencing. It's pretty wild, but I always go back on some of my old recordings and I'm listening to what's being said there and I'm like, oh yeah, you know all of that. Oh yeah, you did go through every single god in the pantheon like 8 or 9 years ago. So I'm saying that also because if you're just jumping in here tonight, you might want to, and you're even new to esoteric knowledge, you might want to just treat this like science fiction. You might want to just say, okay, I pulled up on a live Netflix and the dude was reading out the script and this is what he was talking about. But make no mistake, everything that I'm going to discuss here tonight, you'll see everywhere, especially if you're looking. You'll see it in all of the movies. You'll see it in your own personal life. You'll see it written on the tapestry of life. And it's saying something. And I feel only when you're in balance, you can truly hear it. Only when we're in balance do we truly, truly create to the magnitude of who we are. And so the first thing is, because I do have some disclaimers, so I have to jump right into that just to make sure that I do all of this being mindful. Because mindfulness is important. It shows and is a sheer sign of maturity. So as I said earlier, but I'll say it again because it looks like a few of us have just joined on the line. This is an adept level conversation. Now, here's the thing. I don't get an opportunity to really come in often on the adept level conversations, to be honest. And it's because, I feel like there's other things that are more important, right? There's always something that's more important than another thing. I call that the order of magnitude. So lately we've been working on sovereignty. We've been jumping into ourselves. Our last build here in sovereignty mentorship here at Tribe Vibes was about relationships. If you haven't caught that one yet, it's an amazing one. It's inside of the university, underneath enealogy. I think it's the last thing there. It's relationships before enealogy or something like that. Enealogy and relationships. But that is the precursor to what we're going to be talking about tonight, because I went on after that and I began to keep dialing in, and I was extremely empowered at what I was able to find about what true relationships are and how we can begin to conduct ourselves to get the maximum, which there is none, by the way, but to get the maximum of what we can process here in the reality going on in the experience. So that's what this is about. So no kids tonight. Also, all my scribes on deck, sending much love to you. It's an honor to be with you. This is so important to get to others, and we must admit some of us are verbal. We can take in information and start processing it. We don't know all the time everything that we're listening to. It's funny because how do you figure out something with only your mind that you did not know? I'll say that again. How do you figure out something only with your mind that you did not know? Generally, you have to go to look to something else to get some inspiration that's going to put the pieces together for you. We use nature to do that. That is our blueprint. It's been around for a countless period of time, and it has plenty of lessons that you can learn from it. But in every context, we really want this to be a time. I'll wait for those lines to mute and get that thing handled. Hold on real quick. It's driving all over my conversation. Hold on real quick. All right, there we go. All right, y'all made me go into God mode on the panel and had to mute all the lines now. Here we go. So continuing with this, what I'm getting at here is well, first of all, again, my scribes. It's so important for this message to get to others who may not receive this very well just through the video exposure. And so if you're taking notes out there and you can put those notes together in a way that others can read them and gain some comprehension. So not so much as just, I guess what you call that, a dictation, but actually, even if it takes some ad-libbing just to smooth it all in, I really want to start putting notes with these messages because it helps. It allows us all to recap and it's an important thing. So I just want to, definitely warm up the scribes. If you're out there, we need you. Also, another context around this conversation today is when anything is possible, the only limit is you. Like, this is one of those things you just have to sit in on for a moment. It makes perfect sense, but oftentimes we just don't think about it. In something that is limitless, the only reason why you wouldn't experience to the greatest magnitude of what you ever could desire and dream of has to do with something. It has to do with you. Okay. And that's great though, because that means it doesn't have to do with somebody else. You're not actually waiting on someone else to free you from something or to stop doing something so you can go ahead and enjoy as much as you can of the limitless. But it does take understanding a certain formula. It also takes some maturity, and it also takes you being ready and willing to accept yourself and who you truly are and to bring yourself into balance. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I also want to, again, this message is loaded with disclaimers. That's how it may flop. Sometimes when I big up something and I'm like, but anyway, I'll keep going with it. So another disclaimer around this conversation is when I say male and female here, I'm talking about the energetics. And anybody that is familiar with my conversations and dissertations in the past know that I've mentioned this time and time again, that the human male and the human female are not the only male and females on the plane. But oftentimes, every time I say her or she, right away our mind goes right away to a woman, a human woman. And it's just a product of our egoism, which actually allows us to survive in many cases. It's us thinking immediately, yes, the human women, when we sometimes don't think maybe it's the dolphins, maybe it's the whale female, or more importantly, maybe it's the feminine force behind the eyes of everything that gets polarized in this existence to be a female. And so when we talk about divine feminine and masculine, we also mean everything that has gotten even polarized in here in being a male. But truly, you are everything. You have this balance point. Some call that the androgen. And you're actually capable of procreating on your own, which is kind of like life goals in all of this, to gain the ability once more to restore your power to where you can create. Many of us are starting to realize how we can do that. Some of us are just coming into that awareness, but that too is also limitless. So if you're creating new parking spaces, then that's pretty much how far you can go with it. If you're actually creating worlds upon worlds in which beings witnessing them swoon, well, that is, again, your level of awareness and the magnitude in which you can bring it to. So as we dive in today, we're talking about again the individual goals of man and woman, and I'm saying that statement specifically into the strictest context of the human male and the human female. Me and you here on this planet right now. What is the goal? And the reason why it's great to have goals is because, one, you get a chance to achieve them through focus, but also when you start getting a bit distracted, you can always go back to the goal and ask yourself, well, what is the goal? And then get yourself back on track. And balance has a lot to do with that, because sometimes you can go off to the left or off to the right on the journey. It's all a part of it. But you really need to know at times, hey, where is that center again? What am I actually here to do? And that will snap you back into place so that way you can stay on point and stay in synchronicity. So what we have today is, in the strictest context, what I want to explain to you is, first, for the females, since ladies come first, that your true role, duty, obligation to self is to actually discover the goddess within you. Okay? And I'll say that again. For our females out there and that female in there, your true goal for this particular point of existence is to understand the goddess within you. Okay? And for the male, his goal is to explore that. Okay? And I'm going to let you see how, with this goal, or with this formula, if you may, or this code, you get infinite existence of scenarios and laughing and joy and happiness and all of the different things that you can think of. Whatever you can conceive in your consciousness, however you want it, if you don't forget this principle, because it works internally and it also works externally, you will be able to have it all if that's what you want. So again, for the female to discover the goddess. Now let's put that into the context of where it should be, because we're also using English words. Goddess actually could mean something else. So we just want to string it to exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's this hidden knowledge after walking at least 50 or 60 different paths. This means actual traditions, whether it's Sikhism, whether it's Zoroastrianism, whatever it is. Spending years studying this and practicing the aesthetic until you finally hit the top of it. What I've learned over time is that it always gets to the same thing, that there is a universal system that is happening, a universal awareness that is embedded in all traditions when they're in their pristine shape. But traditions get edited, times change, and things have a tendency to not look like they looked in the beginning. Now, think about yourself. There's this thing called aging, right? So you can imagine when the awareness of the goddess first started and what it looked like is probably a bit different than the awareness of the goddess and what it looks like now, simply through the effect of what we call time. And since time ages things, it has a tendency to make something that was rather beautiful begin to look like something that maybe you don't even recognize, or maybe you don't even want around anymore. And this is interesting, because this actually is really the context of this current paradigm of relationships, which is actually becoming obsolete rapidly. But the general relationship between the male and the female here on the planetary system is suffering from, at times, the same thing that I just recently talked about how when you initially get engaged or get involved, there's this immense light. There's this excitement. This excitement is so strong, it'll turn a beer belly into an 8-pack. I'm telling you, like, guy meets a new girl, and man, he's a changed man. He's smiling, he's working, he's doing all sorts of stuff, and he's happy about it. And to be honest, I just want to crystallize that awareness for you very briefly. That, see, it doesn't matter what's going on around you, outside of you. What's happening in your internal relationships determine how you feel. And I don't care how old you are or how young you are, you've been through this experience. You could be living it up. You could have all of the money. You could have all of these gym shoes or whatever it is that you wanted to achieve. You could have just got that paycheck. You could have just got your new car. But if your relationship is actually in the slum, you're still in the slum. How many have had that happen? That something big happened to them. It was great and it was amazing, but because there was trouble at home, there was something to trouble in the relationship, it had a lackluster effect. Now, on the other side of things, because we love to keep it balanced, I don't care what you're going through. If you're laying next to your boo, y'all could be all snuggled up on that air mattress, they're on a vacant apartment room floor that you done snuck in for the night with no refrigerator. And still, because you're there with that person, man, everything gonna be all right. So do you see how, if we don't break this back down to the simple stuff before we try to climb all the way up to the peak of the mountain, then not only are we not gonna have the energy to make it, we're actually gonna miss some of the key components that involve just us. Tonight is about you being truly selfish. Now, all this self. But it's really about shaking yourself out of this sleep really briefly to realize what exactly is happening to you because of a phenomena that occurs when you actually begin to go out. That's even synonymous with when you finally go out. Like, yeah, I'm going out tonight. And then you meet something on the external, and then you begin to share energy with that And because energy management is, wow, that's a depth level stuff, that's mature stuff. Somehow, in that energy mismanagement, once again, you're now staring at a relationship that the fire is going out, meaning the fire generally inside of you, even though you want to see it only in them, is starting to go out. And so tonight, I'm going to show you how the great arcana has already explained what exactly is going on in this phenomena. And I actually can probably even summarize this within the next 5 minutes. When I said that it's the woman's goal to find the goddess in herself. Yeah, let's start getting some illustrations here, because actually, if I'm trying to make this an hour and a half, I need to really speed it up. So check this out. So here we are. Actually, let me get my picture on the screen also. Give me a moment. What you're looking at is a Masonic tracing board. And it'll become obvious to you as we continue to go on. And first of all, anybody has heard my message before, I think I even need to get off the screen for a moment because y'all got to see all of this. I'll be over here. Let me try me over here, okay? It will become obvious to everyone as you continuously initiate yourself personally, self initiate into your own mystery, that Freemasonry is definitely not in the hands of whoever its original custodians are, because the truth is that this is something that clearly would belong to all of us once you understand the mystery. However, it is facts that it makes perfect sense that if no one's ever really supposed to learn who they are, because there's a jealousy, there's a division in the system, and there's a awareness of something that wants to keep you back from realizing who you truly are, the custodians of it are just going to protect those secrets. So what I'm saying very clearly is, as long as this whole thing keeps going on with the Illuminati and the Ordinati and Intrepidi and Diaboli and all the rest of the societies who are saying these certain symbols belong to them, and this kind of imagery and these symbols and all this, then the world will be lost, because these are the custodians of the custodians of a knowledge that unlocks human beings. So it makes perfect sense that they would keep that knowledge under lock and key. Also, it makes sense that when a person is looking into any of this knowledge, they would be turned back and confused from years and years and years of psychological, sexual, mental, spiritual manipulation to the highest magnitude. Okay? So let me go ahead and correct my image here real quick and get a little bit smaller. Now, the interesting thing here is that what you're seeing on the right is the original Masonic tracing board. And the interesting part about this is because these mysteries are continuously being hidden, if you look at a new Masonic tracing board, it will actually move around many of these symbols just to make sure, again, the knowledge remains obscure. Because there's a simple level of awareness that's being introduced here. And I'm just going to break it down real quick, and it's going to be the foreground to what I'm going to continuously explain today. So let me blow this up just a little bit more. Now, beyond the infinite symbolism, because there's just a continuous burial and symbolism from the square to the swords to the trowels to the compasses to the staircases to the pillars, etc. And all of this means something. In fact, it means multiple things. It generally doesn't mean just one thing. But let's just zoom into our story here today about getting deeper into self and realizing what's actually going on. Now, if this wasn't some kind of map, first of all, it would not bear. So let me get this up on my screen real quick, which is my fit to screen. Give me one quick second. I just want my fit to screen here. What's up? Okay, anyway. So what I'm getting at here, while my computer is clowning, I need to just turn on one little feature here. Give me one quick second. And it's just called fit to screen. Where are you at? Fit to screen. Fit to screen. Okay. Crop. Okay, we'll roll with that. So if this wasn't a map, there would be no reason for it to have north, east, south, west on its corners. Okay. So now when we say, so what is this a map to? We can see that there's clearly a layout. Now, what I've done is I've also superimposed on the left. Okay, so you have on the right the original Masonic tracing board, and then you have on the left an actual diagram of what this is from a constellation level and from an astronomical level as a reference. Okay. Now, the first thing is that pillars are always representations of big benchmarks, big accomplishments. Okay. Now, pillars also are synonymous with woman. Also, even though you see a pillar as a masculine symbol, what right away you have to remove in the mysteries is the concept of man and woman. Because what happens is in the concept of man and woman, that means they have been split. And because the knowledge is whole, you cannot interpret the knowledge from being split. So if you say the pillar is a man, then you'll be thrown off right away. It's a phallic symbol. You'll be thrown off right away because actually a column or a pillar is the reason why we have the goddess Columbia or column. And what this means is column is basically a goddess that is of stability, a powerful, let's say, a powerful force. Now, the reason why also we're using this term goddess is because anything in the physical plane is related to the goddess. Anything in the physical world or flesh is related to the code word that we know as goddess or divine feminine. So everything here is a vessel that is being filled up. And that runs directly congruent with what the divine feminine is. So it doesn't actually have to do with whether it's a what you would call a human man or not. When it's flesh, it's always feminine. And this is the way that you can begin to learn higher levels of knowledge to interpret the mysteries. So when you see 3 columns, what is actually being shown also, because you see a tessellated floor, and just as on my diagram on the left, my diagram shows you that each square on the tessellated floor is actually a benchmark for the amount of years. Okay, so let's say I believe it's like every square is like 40,000 years, or every row, like you see on the chessboard, is 40,000 years, if you may. And every time you see a column sitting on the square, that means that there has been some type of great achievement. Now, for an explorer, a great achievement means that you've actually been able to completely integrate. Okay? There's been a complete integration. This means that in order for, well, let's rewind here. When we say, or when someone says, well, I'm a builder, okay? The next question should be, well, what are you building? What is really worth building? So if you think about that question, like if somebody's dedicated to building, what are they building? More than likely a house. So the next question would be, so who are you guys building a house for? Generally, the response to that question would be for the children. And I'm going to show you in many different ways how the reason why that's not for woman is because woman actually is a house. So it's like, even right now, women think that they need to depend on men, or the divine feminine thinks it needs to depend on the divine masculine. That's not how it works. How is something that has everything going to need to depend on something? That's why I said the goddess is, the woman's job is to unlock the goddess. The man's job is simply to explore that. Now what's happened is now it's being exploited. And this is why we have to wake back up our women. Because when the exploitation starts, only when the goddess awakes will the exploitation stop. Okay? So let me explain this also in another way. Now imagine then, as your system already teaches you, that we're in a gigantic mother goddess, right? But as the story keeps going, it says that she's asleep. Anybody familiar with Gaia's story of being asleep and in a dream? Okay. If you keep reading and you understand esoteric knowledge, you'll run across this a lot, that many of the goddesses are asleep, like Selene. There's even a riddle that says you can either sleep to Selene or awake to Isis. And I listened to that years ago and I was like, what does that mean? But there are many sleeping goddesses. In fact, as you'll see here in this image, in Malta, to be a true knight of Malta, not the impersonators that are doing this now and acting like they belong to the round table. They are here to protect and make others aware of the goddess. So you see, this is the sleeping goddess, which is an ancient statue found on the island of Malta. And as you'll see on the bottom, it says the remains of one of 50 of the goddesses' temples in Malta. Okay? So I'm gonna still break this down for you and build it back up because this is very important for you to understand. If the goddess goes to sleep, what happens to all the explorers? Now remember, I'm working with you here to try to get you to see that you're actually both. But you can polarize yourself if that's how you feel and you just want to be the goddess tonight, you could do that. If you want to be an explorer tonight, you can do that. If you want to understand both in order to hold the great key, then you can do that also. But I'm asking you directly, what happens if you're inside of something and it goes to sleep? What happens to you? So now do you see why a little bit of why this stuff is going on? Because the goddess is asleep. So let me show you something. Here we have the goddess Durga, okay, on the right side, slaying demons, okay, meaning just setting stuff straight. On the left side, we have a very cryptic image which some have seen before. I'll blow it up, but maybe few have seen it. On the left side is the initiate of the left paw, or the lion's paw. This is on the left side here, okay? And what this is about deep arcana from Kemet of masters waking up initiates, okay? But what is often not mentioned or pointed out, as you see in this image, is that the one, excuse me, give me 1 second here. Let me boom, 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 boom. The one that is actually coming out of the tomb is not a male, it is a female. Okay? Now, there are other renditions of this. This is how knowledge is changing rapidly. I personally believe that most of real occult knowledge is hastily being buried by false knowledge. That there is a deluge of knowledge. There's so much information on the internet, and there's so many people. That's why I said there's so many people that are like, this is what it is. This is what I believe. This is who I'm talking to. This is what my dream is saying. And they're playing with something, and they got like a half truth, because to truly know the mysteries, you cannot even be sworn in it. You have to be born in it. You have to awake. You have to become enlightened, right? So what you're seeing here is a duty and a charge of a master. So the master here is in the face of a lion, right? And is holding the caduceus staff, is holding the shepherd of the crook, is holding the tetragrammaton on his waist, which is the pyramid, is actually encrusted in the breastplate. And what is he actually doing? He's raising the goddess from her sleep. Why? Because if you notice, in her hand is the key of life. So in all of the mysteries since time memorial, before all of this late foolishness that we're seeing, any master or mason's job was to awake women, to make sure that they're aware of who they are. Because if they go to sleep, we all go to sleep. If they stop becoming aware of who they are, we're lost. And that's what Tantra really is. Deep levels of Tantra. There's a movie out. It's called Tantra. It's actually in Hindu. And again, I talk about this. I never watched the movie. I only watched a couple of scenes. I kept clicking through it because it's subtitled. I had a bunch to do. But in the scenes that I saw, every scene spoke to me. In one scene, this master male is about to go into this session of Tantra with this female that he's going to teach how to be a tantric goddess, because she knows some stuff, but she still needs to learn some things. And as they start getting into the sensual process and then the copulation process or the connection process, she starts getting into it even more. And as he's starting to watch her, he kind of shakes her and wakes her out of her she's about to orgasm. He wakes her up and says, wait, stop. You need to know what you're doing, because I'm connected to you. And if we're traveling out there and you lose control, we're both lost. And this is what was said in the movie, because it's the truth about the matter to all of existence and what we're dealing with. If the woman actually forgets who she is, we're all lost. So that's why any being that is supposed to be a guru, supposed to be a guide, supposed to be a mentor, supposed to be any of those kind of things, where the male has taken on the role of being a custodian or a husbandman or priest or a kahin, his only duty is to wake up the woman to who she truly is. Because if not, also it creates an imbalance, a huge imbalance. Because if the being that is responsible for giving us all the abundance and giving us all of the what is going on in the physical starts feeling disempowered about who she is, and then starts looking to the being that just is supposed to be exploring the thing, just is supposed to make it all have purpose, to be a reflection, etc., we have a deep situation happening. So let me go on with these mysteries. You happen to wake up smack dab in the middle of a hotbed. Literally, you woke up smack dab in the middle of a hotbed. What does that mean? Some of us are familiar with the story of the mother and the father splitting up. I know some here have been in broken households before, where the woman and the man couldn't figure out how to put it together, and then they split. And it hurts the child. All the child wants is to see mommy and daddy back together again. That is the big story of the human life. When quote unquote Yahweh separated from Asherah, which is how that reads out in the modern quote text, things are never the same again. Let's read it. Here's a text from Jeremiah 44:17 and 18. It says, when we will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and will pour out drink offerings to her, just as we and our fathers did, our kings and our officials did in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. Actually, let me give it to you right here. Once again, we will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and will pour out drink offerings to her, just as we and our fathers, our kings and our officials did in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. At that time, we had plenty of food and were well off and suffered no harm. But since we stopped burning incense to the Queen of Heaven and pouring out drink offerings to her, we have had nothing and have been perishing by sword and famine. Okay, now that was one of the original texts that they still kept in, why they kept altering the text more and more. Who is the Queen of Heaven? Now, you may go try to look for one being, but I'm telling you, there's at least 7. Because what the Masonic tracing board is actually revealing is, as you go through the path, you get initiated. Now, it kind of shows you where Masonry is on the path. It's actually lower than Christianity, meaning Freemasonry, as we see here, is stating that it's lower than Christianity. So that means that obviously these symbols don't mean what people think they mean. That square and the compass doesn't mean what people think it means. Neither does that cross. Neither does that key. Neither does that anchor. Neither does that resh. And neither does that hourglass. Okay? So very briefly or very concisely, as you're going through the initiation, for some of us, we've went through this Christian initiation, that Mashiach initiation. Then we've gained this key to awareness that actually brings you into the anchor, which is a symbol of the goddess, and then actually brings you into what they call the blazing star, which is a 7-pointed star, which is a symbol of what? Well, let's go to our diagram. It's the symbol of the Pleiades. And why is the Pleiades so important? The Pleiades is important because it's well known and well accepted through ancient times that there are 7 wombs, at least. This may give us a hint to what some of these stars are for. I don't want to bring any limitations here because there's no limit. But there is an order to this, meaning that humanity has already pegged that how its civilization and even colonizations and all of its pillars that it's laid and its continuous growth of its species and its template and all this comes from the Pleiades. And what it's a mention of is also that it's called the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. Now, I want to back up really quick here because when you start thinking about some of these goddesses, you have to realize that you're really more speaking of, and I dropped this into the chat the other night when I was riding out on the 22nd. And what I was explaining very briefly at the turn of the midnight was that sometimes I troll eBay for artifacts because eBay is so unmanaged, like meaning there's like no police there. People have taken to selling artifacts that are actually illegal to sell on eBay. And they still have their price tag. So I just go in there and I search whatever I want to know. Like I just type in a keyword or something I want to know, and then I sort by highest price. And then right away, I get your $80,000 vase, which is, of course, here on the right. And on this vase is actually a depiction of a goddess that actually seems to have a lion face, like a lioness goddess. And her navel is actually a third eye. Also over here on the right, there was another $30,000 statue being pulled out of Burma of clearly an aquatic goddess. Also, in order to show you how replete this is, meaning how many different instances of these aquatic goddesses you have, here's a few more. No, that's not Starbucks, but it's where they got it from. In fact, you're going to see a lot of this Starbucks symbolism here in a moment because it does actually mean something. And it is about something that has been forgotten and been lost and been hidden. Now it's just about coffee. So these symbols, what they actually mean is, and this is why it takes maturity. It takes a lot of maturity because the sexual act or the sexual act is one of the most powerful things. It's like the DMT of hyperspace. So when you're talking about, in so many words, even dealing with these stars, which is at the top, meaning that once you reach the top of the ladder, now you have these 7 wombs of creation, which are limitless in how many different levels of exploration is actually happening. Meaning that with the ancient mothers and their progeny, which are the trees, stuff you haven't even seen yet. Like I got 2 bugs laying on my desk right now that I never seen, and they just popped up, and I don't know where they came from. There's stuff that you haven't even seen yet. But it also has an origin, and that origin comes from one of these wombs. Everything that is here in this space that we're actually in comes from one of these wombs. And remember when I was talking about, I said that there's a code, and I mentioned this to everyone. I said there's a code. And what this code does, this code is to unlock the box. Okay, now this is esoteric. This is esoteric knowledge. Okay. This is what the box looks like. It's even also a sexual term. That's why we put the kids away tonight. Sometimes woman's womb and her vagina is referred to as the box, okay? And that is for a reason, because the box is known as the place, it's a symbol of matter. Once again, it's a confirmation that everything that is feminine or everything that is in the flesh is feminine, okay? So this is why a hexagram, of course, it unfolds into being a box. And this is why we also uncovered that the tetragrammaton and also the torus, the hypercube, all of these symbols, even the cross, all have to do with the box. The six or the sex, the conjoining of two forces that are creative. Now, this is also why there's a lot of mysteries around this stuff, because what did I say before about this? What was actually the limit here? The person. So you would have tales, riddles of sadness, darkness, greatness, golden stuff. Anything you can think of would come from this, because it all is a reference directly to the womb. Okay? So I just want to clarify very briefly here that this is where this symbol comes from. And the G, which I think is their Greek term for Ganymede, is a reference to the goddess, not a god. And this is where things get a little strange. Because if every single reference that is made to be for a male actually ends up turning out to a female, then that means that everything is going to be confused. And that's exactly the world that we're living in. And they plan on this continuing. That the awareness of what these symbols truly mean and what it means to have a square and a compass, what it means to actually unite the both forces, what the Queen of Heaven actually is, how she was the mother of even the gods, and why she was then hidden and then put to sleep, and what that symbolism even means, to hide something and to put it asleep. What happens when someone decides that they want to veil these secrets, that they want to veil the woman, that they don't want to let her know who she is anymore? They want her to depend on the male who's no more equipped to actually do anything than she would be at that time. After all, he's just exploring her. And for the males that are out there that may be thinking, well, shoot, I'm not trying to give all my power away. We're talking about something going on inside of you, first of all. And second of all, as an explorer, because I'm always trying to find something new to happen. New is a specific kind of energy. I'm always, the consciousness itself, DNA itself, is always looking for something new to experience, some new information to gather on with this other information that it has. So as an explorer, if there are 7 wombs that you're even talking about other life forms and all that stuff, how far have you really even gone on the exploration, man? You just got started on the journey. So how joyous should you be when you have all of these other beings and all these other things to explore, especially when there's no death, especially when you realize that it's all love, that it's actually all in the essence and the power and the force that actually equals the fecundating component. It's that kind of energy, orgasmic energy, moving through this creation, unless you've been put on timeout, unless you're asleep, unless you're confused. And this is why, that's why I said, the system we just came off of has served us very well up until this point. I'm not saying anything is necessarily wrong or right about it. I'm saying that it's obsolete, though. We have to upgrade the way we see relationships, because we're putting too much time. Woman is putting too much time and attention into the external, and she's not learning about herself. Let me show you something. Women mysteries are strewn across the earth, meaning that it's not just understanding these idols and these symbols and what they mean. There's a real action to this stuff. And I can just give you a brief synopsis of what some of this stuff would entail through me studying different traditions and them keeping a little piece of what woman can actually do. Now, first of all, I mean, just an ode to, if you can create something, they say if you can bring this baby out into this world, like, I don't think we're even fathoming what kind of the picture, the possibilities of what can be done with something like that. At this point, it's being downplayed. We got a bunch of children running around. Nobody wants to take care of them. They're not activated. They're also asleep. So nobody's seeing the true potential in things. So we're not aware of just how powerful it is to have a being that can actually bring other beings into the world. That's one thing. The second thing is based on the Zarin books, that woman has an ability to actually pull a star into her womb. It's meaning that there's a certain way that she can even configure herself and feel, and a star floating by that's just like on its own thing can be like, yo, what's good? I'm going down in there. So she has this power of attraction that's immense. Also, she has an ability to work with nature as a quantifier through her magnetic pull. So, as I said, the attraction is a pull. So this term Magdalena actually is decoded as being the same mag as you see in magnets. The same power of the Magi is the power to actually work the magnetic fields, right? And so what if, again, I told you that all of the priests were really priestesses, that actually back in the day, women were the custodians of these spiritual systems. And what was man doing? Just exploring it. I'm just laid out on the temple floor smelling incense while they're doing the dances, bringing up the energy. That's good enough. I'm going to show you here in a moment how even sex itself is actually, especially for beings that are not trained and not mature, really the nemesis to a relationship. In fact, let's just pause for that. Now, you've noticed and I've noticed that, hey, sometimes when the conjugal starts happening, and generally that's kind of at the forefront these days, once that happens, then there's kind of, once again, a lackluster effect. Has anybody experienced that? Maybe that's just me. You know, like after that first copulation point, things kind of descend from there, right? And it's because, first of all, there was no time really spent in learning the person. We talked about that before. But most importantly, the two beings that are engaged have totally lost the awareness of what it is that two people are getting together for in the first place. Now, as I said before, with woman realizing her power, let me just show you in a perfect world, or at least a world that is awake. Woman knows who she is, right? So she's got this thing going on. She's quantifying with nature. She's definitely not having any limits. So there's no reason, like some of these horror stories they got around, they kill children and abortions and all that kind of, and the goddess does this sacrifice and this God, and I'm like, but that doesn't even make any sense. How's a being that has an infinite level of creation just confined to destroying things? These have to be myths. So let's just say in the true sense and context of us having common sense, if a being has the power of quantifying in nature, attracting stars, can bring all this abundance into the space, what does she really need anything? Now, here's an interesting thing. Have you ever walked into a relationship where the person didn't need anything? These actually become the best relationships. But generally, the two people in a relationship, they need something, even if it's down to their carnal pleasures. Like, I need some booty. And this is not, I'll tell you anything. You see what I mean? If that's happening again, then it's going to be always the same result, because the woman, in this case, who would be guiding this, she doesn't know who she is. Now, here's the interesting thing, because we're talking about divine feminine and we're talking about divine masculine now. When the divine masculine beholds a divine feminine that knows who she truly is, oh man, you don't even got to get this guy any. You don't even have to give him. This guy wants to know everything about what you know. Now, this is also, this is life goals for woman. This is what we talk about. Life goals for woman, life goals for male. Life goals for woman is to be so illustrious, to be so embroidered with your awareness of who you truly are and your power as the goddess, that even just getting a conversation with you is really wild. All the man, let me talk to you. Because through that, if the man is already mature, he's getting the level of exploration that he needs to continue his journey, which is basically an energetic thing. Males are capable of lifting worlds when they feel like it, when they feel encouraged. Hercules, when they're getting encouraged to do something and they feel attracted to it, they'll do it. They'll go kill themselves. Think about it. You got examples of this in history. You got 100,000 warriors for Ishtar, running into sure destruction against 1,000,000 soldiers of Shamash and Xerxes. And they're going to die, but for the goddess, we live again. And this is why. Let me show you. For the goddess, we live again. Now, this again is Mag, again, the magnetic force. Mary, which is the maritime, the goddess of the sea, which is synonymous to the goddess of the stars. Okay, so this says chapter 2, examine the Ugarit material in which Aphrodite appears. She is identified. Now, first of all, let me first back up a little bit for any woman that does not feel included with this. The goddess has so many names. I'm sure she's got one of your names. The thing about the goddess is, like, I realized that even the god that was supposed to have all the names was really the goddess disguising herself as the god with a bunch of names. I was like, damn, goddess, you all over the place. She said, yeah, I'm actually everything. That's how it works here. I hope you figure this out soon. So as it says, she is identified as the consort of the chief god El, the creatress of the gods. Okay, now we're talking. And the nursemaid of the gods. Her epithets include Ilt, goddess, Kadush, holy. Her title is Lady Ithrit of the Sea, and thus hints at some sort of maritime connection. You know, the author is a little confused. But listen to what it's saying. It is possible that the goddess came from Ugrit and Amaru. They're trying to narrow down something that is everywhere. It is noted that the precise etymology of Shir remains uncertain. Additionally, many other ancient Near Eastern goddesses show similar epithets. Exactly, because it's all of them. And they bear like epithets and may have been related to Ashera. Space did not permit a full decision of these other deities in this study. Many of these other goddesses, such as Ishtar and, let me see, I got something on my screen. I think that's Inti, has specific attributes of their own which are not associated with Ashera. The pantheons of the ancient Near East were not rigidly fixed and appear to have certain fluidity and identification. And he's just going nuts trying to discredit that all the goddesses are the same. It is thereof difficult to determine exactly which goddesses sprang from which. Perhaps it is not necessary to pin them down too closely, since each local cult would stress those attributes which they needed most. The important factor is that there is a distinct continuity of the idea of the mother fertility goddess, despite the fact that her exact attributes and epithets could and did change. Right? Well, that would be obvious. However, you see that cave in the back? That's the womb you came from. You see that skull on the ground? That means that it can bring you back from death to life again. So that's why it's always important for a master to exchange that favor. If you actually see any of the goddesses running around not aware of themselves, do point them back within. Because when they keep waking up, then the world continuously is sustained. See, these demons that you see being slayed, contrary to what this modern theism has been teaching about, that basically this is a warrior goddess. So now she's going to go and get on a horse, and now she's going to go and slay everybody. That's not what she does. Let me see. Let me pull up the image really quick here. Actually, what she does is they all fall in love with her. They all recognize that she's their mother, and then they lay down their arms. And because the only opposing force to war is love. But think about how people try to devise in ways in their mind of how that actually rolls out. They think, okay, well, yeah, that we understand enough now to understand that the only way we can counterbalance the forces of darkness, if you may, or forces of evil, if you may, forces of despair, desolation, disease, death, if you may, is through love. But that love is actually a symbol. That symbol is actually a heart. That heart is actually double phi, and that double phi is also the square and compass once again. And all it's saying is that if the goddess is on the dimension and awake and aware, this is coming through every single being that is here, then all of the distortions and negativities, they become slayed. And you see what it says here? The goddess Durga defeats the army of demons mounted on her faithful what? Lion. So who's the lion? Well, look on the left. Who's the one raising the woman out of the tomb? the lion, the male lion. So this means that this would start because this covers Ross, this covers so many other things. This covers the Nagus, this covers stuff that we don't even have the space to talk about tonight. But what I'm really working to get across here and let everybody see and witness is that if we're not in this together, if we're not here to truly empower each other, we're doomed. But the moment that we actually figure out what's really going on here and how each one of our roles is to make each other feel amazing. And when we're given the free pass to do that, see, this is another thing, something that we just have to hone in on, as we talked about last week in relationships. Now, if this person becomes yours, this is actually the downfall and the slip and slide of the gods and goddesses alike. This is why it took maturity. It takes maturity and it takes a certain level of knowledge to reach this stage. And that's why many beings have not reached it yet. Because you can imagine the young ram upstart god or goddesses is like basically trying to possess stuff. He's mine. He's bending to my will. This is when you deal with a non-master of the game. This is the big theme here tonight, is remember that this is a high stakes game you're playing, but a game nonetheless. And if you don't know how to play the game, then you'll lose the game and you'll slide down the ladder just like the Leela book shows you. So the ultimate game is that now let's take this into the context again, as I said before. So now the goddess knows who she is. She knows all the power is coming from where the power is coming from. She knows how to quantify the power. Now she has mature males around her that are gaining counsel from her, and she's likewise giving counsel. Woman is a giver, so she would sit there and give as much as she can without even asking for anything back. After all, she has everything. So this would actually continue ad infinitum, and that's what mystery schools really were. You sit in with Sophia, which is the goddess of wisdom, and she just keep pouring it on you, and you just be there eating popcorn with Pythagoras and Socrates and Horace, just enjoying the show, unless somebody is trying to possess something. Now, here's the big key, because this becomes a turn in all of history. That's why we have the word history. Because something happens at a certain point where possession begins, actual possession, where someone thinks that they can buy one of these goddesses, can buy a goddess. It's called marriage now. People don't even know that. That's why I'm saying the system we're on right now is it's very old paradigm. It's not going to work out. Because the truth about all this is that when a woman was married, if you look in the ancient text, there was a dowry that was given to the father. And this dowry was given because the male was actually paying for the woman. Then she would become technically his slave. She would move from a Sarah she would move from a Sar to a Sarah. And in that transaction, that she would now become property of the husbands. Now, if you're too young to know anything about this, you need to go do your research. But this is where that comes from. And so right away in this point, now one being is possessing another being. And this is a slippery slope. This is the fastest way to lose the game. You see it happen all the time. You're probably doing it. Other people are doing it to you. And this is why it's not working out for anybody. This is why you will maybe attempt to do something or stylize your relationship in a way that millions of people have failed, and you be over there thinking that it's going to work. And you're leaving it up to the other person to make it work. You're actually saying that it's their responsibility to make it work. And because of that, you've lost your power. So in every tense, whether you're a male or a female, the goddess inside of you is asleep. And this is how it works. This is where possession begins, because we all have a level of attraction. We all have the ability to create. So that means that we all have a goddess that something wants to possess. And the system is designed to continue this procession because it's in a slave system. Now, let me show you how the slave system started. So many of you are familiar with the mud flood theory, okay? And what the mud flood theory is, hold on real quick. I need to get I have longer. No, I think this will do. This will do. Let me just pull up the master copy so I can read it from a larger. So the mud flood theory is as a few of our friends have discovered on the internet, such as let's say who do we got? Who do we got? We have Flat Earth British. We have Static in the Attic. And we have a few others that started going through archive.org, as I do often, and started going through all of the old books, and there's tons of them, and then started finding pictures of basically a time in the world that was rather recent, but is very advanced. And even different types of technology, stuff running off of what looks like Tesla cables, and trains of children being shipped to the United States to do labor, and all these things that are actually almost absent from history, but absent from history because most people don't read. Most people don't operate the Scantron. Most people are not going to archive.org and knowing what the keywords are to lead you from one thing to another, to go and find the ancient origins of Israel, the ancient origins of Samaria, different words and names that actually connect you and other things, because all of this is written. They would try to make you think, and in this case, they is the ones who feel like they're the custodians of the world that are totally mismanaging it. They would like you to think that we don't know what happened. And that's why they're in every single institution. That's why they're gatekeepers in every single extent, is because they're hiding a certain level of knowledge that only happened not too long ago. So let's read this, because I know some of y'all already have. What this is saying, now I'm just going to give you a complete awareness here of what's happening, okay? That what happened right at around 1000 BC, everything reset. Here's a direct testament. We, sons of Canaan from Zidon. Now remember, in Canaan, there are so many sons of Canaan because Canaan had several different wives. So when they say the sons of Canaan, they still have not said anything. So meaning that you still have not identified exactly who we're talking about. So it says, we, the sons of Canaan from Zidon, made commercial enterprise from the royal city, dispatched to the land of the rivers and riverward, prosper as a support to the land of the lofty ridges like Lebanon and Carmel, the chosen seat of the superintending gods and the superintending goddesses, in the 19th year of Hiram, our mighty king. Okay, first of all, this is a living account that Hiram was really a king. Now, in Masonic or Freemasonic, in the story, you learn that King Hiram Abiff was murdered by who is now the Masons. And he was murdered because he had a key, he had a secret, and he had a mystery that he never told them. This is the story, but it's a riddle. And because he never told that story, or he never gave that key, and he was killed before he gave it, it was lost. And they call that the lost key. I'm telling you, that lost key is the goddess. So here we go. Hiram, our mighty king, we set out from under his scepter. Now, when you go from under the scepter of a king, that means that you're betraying the king. That's why the next thing it says is renounced allegiance. So this means that whoever's talking here knew Hiram, worked for Hiram, but then traded on Hiram, ditched Hiram, renounced the allegiance to Hiram, okay? And overhauled a merchantman at sea, getting along with 10 ships. So they are basically saying that we disavow from the kingdom of Hiram. We took 10 ships and we went out to the sea as merchantmen. Okay. Now this is actually the ones who are in charge of Freemasonry now. This is their story. They are the sons of Canaan, but they are not all of those who resided in Canaan. After which it says, we were at sea together 2 years, coasting round a land of heat, or the land of Ham, that is in Africa, and then we separated. So these fools couldn't even get along with themselves. They separated. Mighty floods. Okay, here's the account. Mighty floods of water carried or lifted up our company on shipboard thence, and we came thither, 12 men in all, and 3 women, to a new land. Right here, it's accounting they got shipwrecked. And only 12 of them and 3 women survived, and they went to the new island. Now, I've went through this complete text. That new island was actually Spain. This is possibly the origin of who we were calling the Moors then. Which I have mightily enriched and have subdivided. May the superintending gods and superintending goddesses be propitious to us. Okay, so this is a statement. Now I'm going to go on. Established at Zion, but according to the Chronicles of Erie, the surge in the Atlantic, which deluged the extremity of Britain. Okay, so I'm showing you here this mighty flood they're talking about is also recounted here, but according to the Chronicles of Erie, which is also the book of, give me 1 second here. I'll give you a reference here just in case some of y'all want to check this out. Let me see. This is Osius. Give me 1 second here. This is Ossian and the Clyde. Okay, so let me, that's Ossian. Ossian and the Clyde. That's Clyde. This book is available on archive.org. It's about 400, 500 pages of the account of the Isles of Albion in Ireland in ancient times and the Celtic Druids in the traditions in which they practice and how they bear witness to the accounts of the state of the world in their own text. Okay, and so as we go on, it says, but according to the Chronicles of Erie, which are in Oceans of the Clyde, the surge in the Atlantic, which deluged the extremity of Britain and separated the Sicilian Isles from Cornwall, occurred in 1031 BC. Okay, so it's showing you, and there's other references that I have at this, that this upheaval of whatever took place on Earth, which is possibly a planet passing by or a star, caused the waters to come out and deluged and changed up the geographics of many different countries that you're seeing now, broke islands off. That's how powerful it was. And it happened in 1031 BC. And here's an account. So while all the mud flood people have been looking for this evidence, the evidence is right here. So it goes on, which corresponds exactly to 13. Again, according to the Phoenician epigraph, as above, the surge by which the pirates from Zidon were carried to Peru. Okay, this is important because now you understand, again, there's many of these brotherhoods, especially when you see the Aztecs who went into tripping at a certain point. You see even some of the ancient Peruvian traditions start going into tripping at a certain point, meaning they start erasing the goddess from their histories, and they start doing this because these pirates, and I'm still reading this for you here, which again are the sons of Canaan from Zidon. It says, these pirates, which the pirates from Zidon were carried to Peru on the 21st and the 19th and the 2nd of Hiram. But Hiram was contemporary of David's, okay? So I'm going to skip here for a second because there's only one final thing. Now, David is Dravid. Hiram was contemporary to Dravid and was, in fact, a lover of Dravid. What this means is that Hiram was actually a friend of the Negus. Dravid is the Dravidians, and even David, who is also Solomon's father, again, that's Menelik. This is the kingdom of Punt, and a few other names. But anyway, Hiram was even conscribed to build the temple for Solomon and to build pillars and to create things. So there was a deep relationship that all of these kings had in their awareness of the goddess and who the goddess was. And this was original Freemasonry because that is the Star of David or the Star of David, which is also the secret of Hiram Abiff. Again, all of this is saying that this is the secret of Hiram Abiff. This is the key. It is about the goddess. I'm going to show you again. You've seen that one, right? So let's take a look at this one. Do you see, again, this is about the goddess. This symbol of a hexagram is not just a relation to a male and a female coming together. It is actually a relation to flesh, the funkendating component, physical reality, and where it comes from. And once again, you have this mermaid, even though it's starting to get stylized. And then you see that box down there with the circle around it. Same symbolism over and over again. So this is why when this happens, it starts throwing you off, like the G and that, because people have a definition of this now that has been completely circumvented by I guess you can say, a brotherhood. Even though there are some women back there, there are Eastern stars also back there. And this is an act to basically disempower all the rest of the tribes by actually taking the knowledge of the goddess away from the women of those tribes. And then if you get to the woman, what do you think becomes of the male? Okay, so I think we're a little bit more clear here. So let's continue this here and what it is saying. And again, this is just making sure I do my part in all this, to put my hand out there and make sure for these goddesses out there that you get picked up in all of this and that you remember who you are and your power, because a lot of what we have to deal with here in infinity is going to depend on you waking up. And since we're all sharing this same space and this same spectrum, I really feel like that, hey, see you forever. So if you're empowered, then that may be, if I'm actually off kilter at some point or getting pelted on the wings of Aldebaran by a group of pirates, you may pull in and give in some heavy artillery to what needs to happen over there. So let me finish this here. So what it's saying is, in the respects to the circumstances, let me give you one more account before I close this. It says, the dates thus harmonize among themselves in an astonishing manner. And the great geological event recorded, some volcanic surge that shakes the mountains of Palestine, rends the coast of Great Britain, destroys navies in the Mediterranean, and sweeps pirates from the Atlantic to Peru, is the same precisely. Okay, so there is a very close account here that is very important that the author has maintained and preserved, that this cataclysm swept pirates, people who were vagabonds, people who were thieves, onto the shores of other countries that were already falling out from the latest destruction that happened. This is also the exact mud flood account, and that's that you weren't getting into what we call now the United States. That whole area, 1000 BC, that was the great isles of Atlantis, the ends and the beginnings of the world. Then you had the pillars of Hercules. Man, everybody was bezeled out. Everybody was aware of the consciousness flowing and lots of stuff happening. And then the shift. Hey, shift happens. The only thing that you got to be prepared for is that there's going to be some changes. And in that process, many cultures are sitting there trying to get their stuff back together. But the seafaring pirates, they were regrouping fast and became the ones who actually took advantage of the situations because they could reach places that no one even had known about. So they came into lands that had been completely desolated, and only thing that was remaining was all their shrines and all their knowledge and their wisdom and secrets that had been written on stones and rocks and symbolism. And they took that, just as a thief will steal a signet ring of a king and masquerade around as if he's the king. They took those things and then said that those things belonged to them, and they became the custodians of those things. Now, it also mentions, and I didn't enclose it here, but these pirates were also quote unquote pimps. They kept women as slaves also on board their ships, and often went into territory and used these women. If we talked about Saguni the Jew and the whole aspects of understanding a person's weaknesses, the arts of Machiavelli, all of these different things they were utilizing and learning because they were pirates. And here goes more proof of that. I have a book in here from the Ancient Aleppo Lodge. The book is as big as a Harry Potter book. And in this book, it accounts this bottom part that I'm showing you right here. I've taken a picture of the book and I pasted it right in here. And it says, and this is all important, I'm almost done here. This is a 2-part series, by the way. The granting of a document by a competent officer of the state. Okay, now this is coming from a book of the Book of Aleppo. Okay, this book is passed out to initiates of Aleppo of the highest degree. There's only 153 of these books. I have one of them. When someone dies, they're supposed to give the book back to the lodge. Apparently, the one that I have, when the guy died, they put it on eBay. When I was going through my process of awakening, the line was so clear, it would just tell me what to do. So it said, hey, go on eBay, Google this, Grab that right there. I bought the book for like $20. Right now, the book sells for thousands of dollars, right? Because there's a couple more copies available. This is the Aleppo Lodge, the Great Temple, the 2-part series, and it has every picture of every member of the ancient order of the shrine. This is some real Indiana Jones type of stuff. They got Burkhart, actually, who's also in the Aleppo Lodge or a Freemason, is the character in which they're modeling the great Indiana Jones, as they call him, after. These are explorers, but pirates, swashbucklers. It's a real thing. And they're not joking with that whole the stuff that you see in Britain now, the conquering and the sword and all that kind of stuff. This is that same band of pirates. And that's why many people have told you in the conscious community that the people who are in charge are really pirates. So here it goes. The granting of a document by the competence of the officer of the state. Let me make sure this is on the screen. It is. And it says, permitting the person therein named to pass or travel from place to place without molestation by land or by water is a time-honored international custom which owes its origins and continuance to the danger of attack by robbers on land, by pirates on the water. It is this custom that gave rise in the former years to a degree known as the Mediterranean Pass, conferred only by Royal Archmasons and Knights Templar. It is a degree that has no connection whatsoever with any lecture or legend and is different from the degree of the Knights of the Mediterranean Pass. Being now nearly obsolete, the degree is only a Masonic curiosity. It may be mentioned, however, as a historical fact that vessels with Mediterranean Pass Masons on board have escaped being captured and plundered by the Algerians and other African pirates who infested the Mediterranean coasts simply because on the pirate ships, listen to what it says, because on the pirate ships there also happened to be some persons or some person or persons who have been admitted to this degree. So they're saying that the people on the pirate ships were Royal Archmasons and Knights Templar. And the Mediterranean Pass, a facsimile which appears on this page, was used by the noble John Worthington while serving as United States Consul at Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. It is a document of ethical maxims rather than an official passport. Like those generally issued by travelers, the pass makes notes that the prophet's journey was from Mecca. So they go on and go on and go on and go on. But here is the pass. And what the pass basically states in Arabic is that by punishing of their Grand Council, which is clearly, move me out of the way, another Royal Arch Master Mason pirate, that a person that is carrying this or is affiliated with this seal is actually able to go across the waters, and if a pirate boards their ship and then they hand this to him, the pirate a dip. Isn't this supposed to be pirates? How are the pirates giving passes now? If they're giving passes for other pirates, so this is again inconclusive evidence that what the world is dealing with is plunderers. But there's no greater treasure. There's no greater treasure than the divine feminine. This is why what they're trying to conquer, even when they say they have a pillar, it's because they've taken even countries like Colombia. Look what they did to Colombia. They've taken countries like Brazil and the Amazon. Look what they did to the Amazon. They've taken countries like Russia. Look what they did to Mother Russia. They've taken countries like Alkebulan. Look what they did to that. That is a pillar for them. And then what they do is they also teach the males to do the same thing. That comes across in the cartoons. That comes across in the love stories. That comes across in every single thing that's embedded in the male's mind. Because obviously there is that immaturity of feeling that competition. Instead of enjoying everything that's going on, you want to compete with it. This is what we're dealing with. A jealousy. This is why I said you woke up right in the middle of a hotbed. We're dealing with a force on this planet right now. My goodness. All of the stuff that we have to keep doing to get more things happening for people to become more aware of what's going on. I'm telling you, all this extra stuff that's going on, what people are talking about, I believe that all that stuff is a last-ditch effort. All we have to do is wake the women up. All we have to do is let the divine feminine aspect of ourselves know where their power is, and then let them do what they need to do. Other than that, we'll be standing in the way and we'll never be able to enjoy anything great. I do not want to explore horrific lands. I do not want to cross over the pillars of Hercules, over the wall where the horde is, into the black forest where it's only a swamp with death and mosquitoes and pestilence and things that eat that there. I do not want to go into those spaces. And I'm telling the divine masculine within all of us that if you don't wake up the divine feminine, she's going to remain asleep. And these pirates are going to keep plundering her until this becomes the reality. And every man, if now we want to polarize it, that goes out there and thinks that the only relationship that we can actually have with women is to actually have sex with them, we're only perpetuating this. It's a reason. And also, let me explain to you why. Now, as I said, sex is like the DMT of the engagement, okay? It's like it takes two things: maturity and real wisdom. There's actually real knowledge that has to be tied into actual general, what you would really use sex for, or really use sex for. Now, this doesn't mean that tonight you decide not to give up any to your lovely husband because now you think this is being used for someone else. I don't want to kill it for anybody here, but I'm just saying, when you really know what this stuff's for, let me show you how it would get really obscure of how to use it. So my text here says relationships beyond sex, because what I'm working to get males and females alike to understand is that, ladies, if you're out there and you're telling your man that he's only going to be with you forever and he's never going to go anywhere, you're disempowering yourself. However, this is a catch-22 situation, because if he's not mature and he's not aware of what I'm talking about right now, and you're not mature or you're not aware of what I'm talking about right now, or it doesn't make sense to you, any of those combinations where one is missing, it's going to misfire. That's how sensitive a relationship is. I'm sure each person has been in here to watch how fragile a relationship is. This is another area where it's very fragile, because when one person is not doing it, it messes the whole thing up. Let me explain to you why. Now, technically, for the woman, the man is not supposed to be like, shoot, you only talk to me. I don't want to see you around nobody else. I don't want you calling no other guy. I don't want you doing anything. Fellas have a hard time with that. But remember, it's not women generally that are going out sleeping with everybody. Generally, they can go and talk to another guy and not do anything with him, and that be okay for them. It would be only then the male's paranoia. But here's also what happened that males don't like. When you want to actually go and do something on your own and have a great time, or do anything beside be around her, she's like, no, you need to go where I'm going. You need to do what I'm doing. Where else you got to go? Why don't we go together? It's Valentine's Day. And you're complaining about that. That's how it becomes a catch-22. Because if you had to let her have other men that she's actually talking to and that she's learning from, as long as those men are actually mature and aware of the things that I'm talking about right now, then it would keep growing. But remember, and this stuff is so difficult to communicate, a master in the game never allows anyone to take up too much of their time. Listen to what I'm telling you. When you're out there with it and everything, everybody's loving you. Imagine, the goddess, she's fully aware of herself. All these suitors are out there. They're having a great time in exploration, but she's got a cutoff point for that. That's actually what keeps them, she hung up on me. That's what keeps them interested. And then also, likewise, for the male, if you're ever a master in the game, you know not to pour it all on. And not to every single moment you call her, hey, what's good? Hey, what's good with you? Now, any woman that accepts this is the part of the perpetuating problem. Hey, what's good with you? All right, that's good. That's good. So you sleep over there? So what'd you learn last night? All right, okay. So I'm coming. All right. All right, she's good. Man, she makes me feel great. I call her again. So anybody that's pouring it on that thick, you already know what happens to those kind of guys. Now, how has he lost? He's lost because he's not realizing that if he pours too much into that, he's going to lose the game. Not only with her, but he's also going to predominantly lose the game with himself. He's going to become so distracted on that one womb that he's going to forget that he's supposed to be an explorer. Now, remember, I'm talking to the internal and the external alike, however you want to take it. This is why things don't work out in relationships. This is the great arcana, though, because everything is relationships. You may think right now that, well, why don't we get on to, some of the more deeper stuff? It doesn't get any deeper than this. We cannot get beyond the space that we're in society right now until someone starts learning this. Now, let me keep going. So now let's say, for instance, you learn how to get turned on by a person's culture, their underpinnings. They actually been working on themselves. Instead of trying to attract everything, they're working on themselves. They're now enriching themselves. They know stuff. They got skills. That's way more appealing than just a momentary situation. And so you're talking, so yeah, I was actually inside of Dindara and I did a meditation in there. And I was able to spread my sacred energy through the space. So the guy's like, damn, this is really beating this other chick who just, she was just talking about how she bought like Chanel number 5 last night. And this one's been at Indara. Do you see the difference? Now, also realize that investment, going to other places, learning different things, exploring other people, that is an investment in self. So if at any point something is blocking you from doing that, you're being pillaged. So let's keep going with this. Now, let's say I have 7 of these kind of relationships. Women that I talk to, we don't cross into that realm of DMT, basically for communicate, for connection, because that's like, I'm going to show you in a minute, only really used for 2 things. But we are totally connected when it comes to our awareness. And we also know when to cut it off. This is great. Man, I love when we have this opportunity to connect. I'm about to get out of here. I got to go do a couple things. All right, great. That's how life is supposed to flow, because now you have infinite streams. You have awareness, connections. You have everything that you need. You're filling up, right? Versus if you just have one thing going on, well, 1 is too close to 0. That's what a friend of mine used to always say. So here's what also happens. Now, the heresy in society today is the reason why, especially with the Catholic churches and the Christian churches, they want to put this taboo around the sex thing. Notice how if anybody's present during this time, generative components are out in the open. So it's almost like as a kid, you would understand what this does. This wasn't seen as X-rated. Now, this is seen technically as X-rated, even though you see a lot more in the reality right now. But when as you're a child, this kind of, titties, booty, you're going to this frenzy. And what's happening is that there's this action that keeps occurring in reality that's saying that, hey, this is eventually what that turns into is this is something that you want to do. This is something that is a mark of manhood and womanhood. Once you finally do this, you lose your virginity and then blah, 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 blah. And there's this huge buildup that you're supposed to go out there and actually have sex with someone. Now, this is a society where that program is completely set. And we talked about this earlier. Once that happens, now there's a lackluster effect of the energy because you didn't even know who the person really was. You didn't have that time. That person never even invested time in themselves. Generally, and this is something we've all been through, so I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying we got to fix it. You haven't even had any time yet to really grow up and to learn who you really are in the first place. You're already making that kind of connection and commitment with a person. But because they don't know what they're doing, you don't know what you're doing. And only society, as we know it, has been suggesting this. Now you can see how dangerous it could be, only for the fact that, 1, it kills relationships because it doesn't allow the 2 beings to ever really know who they truly are before they go into this phase. 2, if you don't know how to do Tantra, which is Tantra in itself is one of the hidden secrets and mysteries of the real arcana, right? The real arcana is actually centered around Tantra. Stuff is dangerous in many ways. especially if you don't know what you're doing. But it is a specific art. It is a specific level of knowledge. So if somebody doesn't have that specific level of knowledge and doesn't even actually know how to connect and is not trying to make a child, what are we really doing with DMT for physical connection? So you see what I mean? If both parties don't, if one he doesn't know tantra or she doesn't know tantra and he's not trying to have a baby and she's not trying to have a baby, the two most important things that sex are really used for can't even happen between these two. So they never even really had sex. This is the truth to it. They got involved, but like kids, they didn't know what they were doing. And that, which should have come last in the context to, it's a buildup. If it ever happens, it's a buildup. You learn this person. Then you realize at some point that maybe you want to connect with the person on, or it wouldn't be a maybe. You would know, I want to connect with this person on this level. But it would definitely not be something that happens within a few days. So because of that happening, now everything is kind of out of order. And this is why, even if the relationship continues, now the person feels like they own you. Because in effect, because they've twined around you, they kind of do in a certain way. And that's why it's important for people who are connecting to understand what they're doing on the metaphysical plane. Because let's say if the woman doesn't know what she's doing and she gets entwined with a male that also doesn't know what he's doing, she will still be twined possibly. In more cases than not, the goddess is going to be twined more than the explorer. And this guy's going to be ready to run off. But when he runs off, you're still going to be connected to him because it's like a coil. And then now you're connected to a person that you don't even know. You don't even really like them because they did that now. And then now it's another thing on the board in the game to chalk up a loss. You take a L. No pun intended. It's just because the god of Ashira is an L. But anyway, so the reality here is that, let me finish my notes here because I'm almost done. But these are the key components to life. This is the conversation that few can stick into or have because of the level of awareness that's happening on the planet right now. There's no awareness of what the sacred key really was, how it was hidden away, and that becomes synonymous with woman's power being hidden from her. How woman is now made to depend on man. Now basically where we're getting everything from is trying to get it from us. Huh? Now woman's thinking man's supposed to be paying for her something, buying her something. How can you buy somebody something that has everything? Unless we've got hooked to like Prada purses versus lotus blossoms and orchids. You see what I mean? Like if we're hooked to the false luxury. Now lux is light. So lux is everything made from light. The goddess is lux, is light, is loose. So the goddess actually has every single thing manifested in the physical world, fruits, trees, every single thing you can think of. So how could that being be looking to some other being to give it something? That would throw everything off right there. That's why we have to put the power back where the power is. So that way, when the box is powered up, now all of the multiple realities, the multiple levels of things and how things can be done. So when women activate, men will begin to see the potential of what can really be done. And this will also open our explorations. It'll open our levels of awareness. It will allow us to put down the conflicts, the possessions, all of those kind of things, because those are not accepted. Those are not appealing traits. So as long as this world makes appealing traits, some dude that just says he has a bunch of bread and, he seems to have his way with the ladies because he's got some gift or gab and a few necklaces or whatever, or a Fortune 500 job or whatever you can put in that category, as long as that continues, we'll always be thrown off. And we won't even see that's actually at our own detriment because we have a group of pirates back here regulating and capitalizing on every single thing that we have going on. They're capitalizing on our progeny. They're capitalizing on what we're creating, what we're abandoning. That's why people are abandoning their children. Supposedly they found almost 35,000 children underneath a military base inside of a complete underground area that Hollywood had set up. And there's so many now names that are coming out. This may connect to what they were saying about a big, huge pedophilic bust that they're doing right now, where others are going under the carpet because they have so many records there, the people who were actually coming there and enjoying this sick house that they've created, and all those beings that were there that were abused. And that's why this is a high stakes game. And what I mean by that is that if we're not waking up the goddess and we're perpetuating sleep of the explorer, the atrocities that are occurring while the being is asleep is weighing on all of us. So that's why you have to come back into who you truly are. You have to, as a male, come back into your mastery. As a male lion, extend the lion's paw to the goddess and pull her out of her grave. Point her back to herself. And let's get this thing actually happening here. And just realize also, again, if you don't see this in yourself because you're an androgen, you won't see your own self-worth. You won't see your own values. The polarities, us being split, us having all this stuff, it's affecting us. It's costing us. And that's why we're living in a world that feels limited. It feels hindered. This is 100% what is being detailed here today. This is what's happening that's making things a buzzkill. So when we remove these things in our space and we actually carry out this sacred code, this is a code. Like, I was trying to come up with a way to let everybody understand how this is a code to the matrix, how the tetragrammaton became the code to the matrix, how the torus is the code to the matrix, but ultimately how that just means awakened human being. And the reason why it's a code is because each person has to learn how to unlock it within themselves. So I can give you support, I can give you my strongest hand, but it's still for you to actually realize the importance of yourself and to pick yourself up and to raise yourself up. And what I have to do, though, also is I have to make sure that I'm not disempowering you by making you believe that if you're in the position of supplying all the power, that somehow it's coming from me. That's how you master the game. So that way you never overcommit. You never are in an uncomfortable situation where somebody feels like that you owe them something that you could never give them anyway. Or also that you feel like that something belongs to you in a space where nothing belongs to none of us. Like, how can you take another being and say that that being belongs to you? You got to check yourself at some point and say, when that's done to you, do you like how that would be done? Now think about on the metaphysical level, because that's really where it's all taking place at. And who have you given yourself to? And what has that person? That's why if a person is asleep, they don't even know who they've given themselves to. Some of the times, the relationships that we're in, the person has given themselves over to something else. If they're asleep, because they don't even know who they are. So something is definitely taking possession of those jewels. And now they at times want to take over you. So this is where maturity comes in. This is the next phase of your existence in infinity. So my last notes here are the evidence, once again, and I need to load one image that didn't get in today. Let me see if I have it here. It's about that this constellation, when you finish this map, go in here real quick. I think we were over here. Yeah, see that image, that may have to be for part 2. But when you finish this map, which I finished this map through the cosmos, let me see if I have this image. In Syrian, which is Kemet, which is what you call modern now Egypt, there's a map that matches this map. And it's not here. I have to clip it and then bring it back over. But what it shows is as this center column continues to go up, as it says that arrival, this massive column, as it keeps going up, it points to the hippopotamus, which is also near the Pleiades. And I thought it was odd, that when I was concluding this level of awareness, that higher self made it a point to explain to me about the hips, that it was all in the hips. I'm like, okay, this is going too far. I'm going to sleep tonight. It's like, no, it's serious. It's in the hips. It's something that you're missing about the hips. And I was like, beside the obvious? And it was like, but yeah, because when you look at, in this sacred geometry, the goddess's body is the whole key to the whole thing. Like if you want to go into other realms, you want to do other things, you just need to understand this geometry. And that's why if you just even look and you know what you're looking at, that becomes enough. You don't even need to touch. It depends on how tempered your system is, meaning that if you wanted to attract all the beings in the world, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but that would actually be a step-by-step plan to keep tempering your attraction and never lose your attraction. So this would be like, let's say, for instance, we jump on the phone. We have this amazing conversation, and then you just can't get enough. But I always cut the conversation off, and I move on. And then whenever we connect again, it's amazing. You even forget that you're mad that I wasn't even talking to you for that period of time. We have this conversation. It's enough. That's called tempering. Because if a person gets too much of you or what they feel like is enough of you, what happens? Well, we all know what happens. So this tempering effect, I wanted to bring up because, and this is my last thing here. I'm just trying to finish getting this off. The hips. So what happens is, so I was explaining first is how if you were taking your time and you were actually looking at every piece of the goddess, this increases the level of attraction. It's only when you're just seeing the whole thing, you think you know what you're looking at, and then you try to get everything that you can out of it, and then you're gone. You haven't penetrated the goddess. You have not, as they say, penetrated the rites of Isis, okay, or went beyond the veil, right? Because you haven't went inside. You haven't seen, you're seeing her, but you don't know what you're seeing. Like they're saying with the sacred cut. So what this was about is that the hips of the goddess is the center of the power, because it's through the hips that, now mind you, I was being explained all this before I saw the constellation and the ancient maps that were in Chemis, but it was basically explained that the hips, that hip point is where all the power is coming from, because it's through the woman's hips and then through her womb that has the power to actually bring forth this child. That in the hips is all of the strength of this goddess. And I was like, yeah, I can really see how that works. Just to be, I can see how that works. And then it said, now take a look at this. And on the completion of this map, which I'll show next week, you'll see the map go right to what the combatants had depicted as the hippopotamus constellation, the female hippopotamus. And of course, as that story of creation goes, that all the human beings and the different variants of the human beings and the living forms that are here came forth from the hips of the goddess, or the hippopotamus. So that is it today. I know that this probably makes total sense. I know it may be a lot of readjusting that one needs to do, or maybe a little bit, depending upon where you're at with this whole thing. But I know for sure, because I check this stuff back over and over and over and over again. I have millions of years worth of knowledge to cipher through to find out if this is the truth or not. I'm only interested in the truth. I have no allegiances to anything. I don't owe any gods. I don't owe any goddesses. I don't even owe myself. I am nothing. I'm clear. I have no motives. I'm not looking to get something, because I figured out when you do all of that, you unlock an immense power within yourself, and it becomes your foundation. You're stable, and it doesn't matter where you are and what's going on. So I'm going to tie this into the first part of my conversation. Remember when I told you that in a relationship, if that relationship is great, no matter what's going on, you're going to be great. You're going to feel good. That relationship starts within you. There is a divine feminine and a divine masculine inside of you that, just like Yahweh and Asherah, broke up. Now, I think part 2 is for me to explain now up into the part we're at right now, what actually happened. Once this starts to occur, you have a masculine group of gods, which were run by the ancient druids, which look different than what you think. But these ancient druids believed that the power came from the sun, and that when the sun beamed its rays on the ground, that's when man was born from the beams of those rays, respectively to the soil quality of that land. And they became patriarchs. While in the ancient tradition of the goddess, what is known is that the goddess actually rose like a tree out of the ocean. Once again, another deep mystery. The goddess, according to all the ancient stories, rose from out of the ocean as a tree. This is why we almost got one image here that didn't get a chance to get through. This is the unlocking of the awareness of why we are explorers. Right here, you will see on the top of this Mount, the real Mount Meru, which is called Samara, which oddly sounds like Sumerian. You see there's a tree when you finally get all the way up there. That tree is the goddess. She grew out of the ocean, which is all of these areas that you're seeing down here. And everything rested in her branches. As we go forward, we find also more ancient iconography. I think this one's worth about 120,000. On this right here, you see that this is called the seven heaven. It is 7 goddesses. Remind you of anything? This is Oriental stylized. Let me blow this up a little bit more. Let me blow this up one more time. This is the real Mount Meru. This is what the explorers are exploring, or the explorative aspects of ourselves. This is these 7 goddesses, or these 7 wombs. So do you see, all of the knowledge is replete. This is also why you see the sky and the earth connecting. The same thing that you see with the Jed, I believe that's Jeb and Newt, I believe, where the sky and the earth connect. This is once again that symbolism, as we see here. The sky and the earth connect. But this is a direct reference to the androgynous aspect of our creation. That you have the ability to connect with yourself, that you're actually parthogenic, that internally you have a masculine and a feminine pole. And that when you're capable of coming into that level of awareness of power within yourself, you're self-sustained. Now you can really start having fun. Now you can really have what we would say is a relationship. Now you can really have what we would call sex, because you would know yourself. So you would know exactly how much of anything external that you needed. And you would actually maintain as a master in the game. Because as I said, it's high stakes and there's pirates on board. So we got to remember on this big vessel, because this is the earth. You know, there's a lot about this knowledge. It goes into deep mysteries. All of those wombs we've just began to explore. But remembering within ourselves also the connection that we have to this goddess also gives us the path through life and death. And that's why it was so important. That's why they tried to take it from Hiram. It was a key. It was the key to life and death. See, this went beyond your relationship and whether you're going to be in love this life. It actually went into whether you knew how to live again. And living again is a stage of, it's a consciousness. It's a stage of awareness of self. And that's what I got to say today, Tribe. So hopefully, that's been enough for you on a Friday night. It's just a Friday. This is just us coming in and really saying these days and these times that we're living in, the level of wisdom that we receive must be in a greater measure, not equal, but a greater measure. Surely, when the world starts looking like this, the great mysteries are being revealed. They get revealed from an energy that's why you'll feel the change. You don't feel changes because of something that you read. You don't even feel the change because I'm necessarily saying this. You feel the change because the stars are actually aligning. And when that happens, it aligns inside of you. This is your own personal cosmic celestial alignment. That's why I left in the notes. This may assist in getting you calibrated and aligned just a little bit more, or on point with where things are right now so far with the cosmos and what exactly it's looking to get us aware of, so that way we can know what our purpose is here. And then also when we're around other people, we can keep them on point, especially if we care about them, by being the mature being here. The one who knows even the highest tantras I don't need to touch you. There used to be this guy called a tantric mongoose. I'm not sure if you guys ever seen this guy, but this guy would be making the women go into these climaxes by just running his hand over the top of them. And they'd be, oh, it was real. And it's because when you understand how much power is within, this is the minimum of what you can do, is to keep someone pleased and attracted. But then you learn as an adept, what am I doing to that person? Am I disempowering them? You got, like in the game, you got to make sure that the balance is, because if this person is going crazy and now they're committing all of who they are to you, I just want you. You're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for that in the game one way or another. And this is why it's this check and balance system with this thing is wild. I'm baffled by the intelligence of the creation. That's what I was saying is the exploration of the goddess, because even it has a check and balance system. Now, yeah, you go out there, turn up your attraction juice, take all of this literal, sit there and hold back, keep tempering everything. Now everybody's attracted to you. And now because you were just sitting there saying, I just want people to love me. I just want them to like me. And then see just how much trouble that gets you into. You'll be begging back for this state where you hadn't kicked any of that off at all. So that's why they say fools rush in. This is the time that you understand. You learn how this works inside yourself. It definitely works on the external. You see what you're capable of doing this life and beyond. These are life goals for this particular experience. The exploration and the awareness of self. Or more importantly, in the right order, the awareness of self. For the divine feminine, the awareness of the power of the goddess. And then the explorer. And through these two things, because they complement each other, there is each person has a purpose. Like somebody said, the male don't even have a purpose. They're just, they're actually, what they call them? They're degenerated females. This is one of the running stories. Actually, no, that's not what's happening. In all this creation, woman's like, I got all this abundance. Who's going to come in? Who's going to come enjoy it? It's not a problem for me to make it. Who's going to witness it? If I make dinner, who's going to eat it? I can grow 5,000 fruits that taste like 5,000 different things. Who's going to eat it? There's a pleasure that comes in, like even when a meal is prepared and someone eats that meal and then they're gratified, there's a feeling that the one who prepared that meal has, especially as a mother. Do you understand? So the mother, she prepares a meal. When the children sit down and eat it and they say, oh, mother, this is so good, there's a fulfillment coming to both parties. It's only when things are imbalanced where one being feels like, oh man, I don't want to do this. That means you've got imbalance. That means that somehow you're committing too much or haven't spread enough or got something that's holding you and possessing you. And these are the things that you're looking for in life to make the adjustments that you need to see the future that you want to see and actually to live in the present that you need to be in. So, wholeness and balance vibrations. I'm going to let the mics open up. If anybody has anything to say, they can go ahead and say it. I'm not going to take any questions because this stuff is multi-layered. So we'll have to get back on this next week. And, give yourself the time and give yourself the opportunity for self so you can start seeing how to really work with yourself into all this and to put yourself into the best places that you can be in life because it is available now. And I want to leave you with one final awareness. One final awareness is the key to this whole thing. Another key. Remember, I got two hands. I got some ears. I got this brain. Got these legs. And I got a heart. And I even say there's a soul in here. But you do too. And actually quite a few other people do. But that doesn't mean we're all doing the same thing with it. This is the big key. When you start seeing everything going on around you and you start basing everything about what you are doing on everybody else, that's going to be a big error. Because yes, we all have these eyes and these ears and these brains and this, but we're not all using it to do the same thing. This is also where your encouragement comes in because you've been given a great gift. If you can understand any of what I was saying tonight, you got the juice. Do something with it. Use it. Keep increasing yourself. Go into infinity. Realize there's so much beyond this. Like I've been on certain substances. I've taken certain breaths and went into spaces that have nothing to do with what's going on in this world. And it's functioning and working and everything to prove there's something going on beyond all of this. But let's focus on right here. Because this is the gift that's being immediately given to us. This is the meal that is on the table right now. And there's so much potential here, you've even just began to explore. And that's what I got. So wholeness and balance vibrations. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much also for being a conduit for this information. Again, if there was only one of us here, maybe I don't show up, but there's so many of us. Right now, it's 156 of us on the line right now. It's Friday night. We could be anywhere. We could be doing anything. And where we're at is we're investing in self. So it's going to pay off. It's paying off at every single moment. So here we go. That's what it is.